Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan. The Giants take away a victory, 21-15 over the Cleveland Browns. We finally got to see some offense. We finally got to see some defense. It looked like a complete game from start to finish. 3 weeks too late, but that's okay. We'll take them where we can get them. How you doing, Cranky Fan?
Grump, remember I said before the season started that my over-under for wins would be 10. That includes my high school team. Well, I had the triple this weekend. High school, college, and pros all won, baby. So I am smiling ear to ear. The way to get through this season is not to be looking at every single game and immediately putting into context of what does that mean for this season or the rebuild or the price of tea in China. If we win a game, everybody give yourself 24 hours to be happy and celebrate that we won a game. Then we'll worry about these bigger picture things. So I'm still in the, I think my 24 hours is up, but I was happy after that win. I don't care about draft picks. I don't care about the fate of the world. I'm just happy we won a game and we're off the schneid for that. So that's how I'm feeling.
I'm right there with you. And I also think that goes like double weighted for the first 4 weeks of the season. Because I think if there's anything that we've seen from around the NFL, it's that we operate far too much on assumptions based on last year, based on perception of offseason moves, based on perception of coaching changes, based on perception of draft picks. A lot of it is, 8 months of talking about stuff that we are just kind of guessing a little bit.
And not only that, we also overreact to the last thing we saw. Everybody's overreacting to week 1 and week 2. I mean, if you look at, I would say 29 of the 32 teams have a different opinion of that team after week 1 or week 2 or week 3. There's very few teams like this crappy Bengal team we're watching tonight and this crappy, Jacksonville team where after week 1, week 2, week 3, your opinion really hasn't changed about them. Like, I think of every team from the Giants to the Cowboys to the Eagles to this Washington team to you name it. Your opinion has not been uniform across these 3 games. And that makes the NFL interesting. It makes it stupid to gamble. But it definitely, it's not like college where Georgia's going to crush Vanderbilt. This is, I don't know, I'm going to come in here and see potentially Dallas get rolled at home or, who knows? I lose my survivor pick again because, the Bucks lay an egg when you don't think it. And that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. I mean, for instance, maybe Minnesota's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we overrated Houston. I think everyone definitely overrated Cincinnati. So there's a lot that goes into it, but for this week, the Giants finally looked like a competent NFL team. I kind of want to start with the offense because we had a lot of stuff that looked pretty good. Let's start with Daniel Jones here, went 24 of 34 for 236 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had 8 carries to the tune of 20 yards. Just a couple of things on Daniel Jones because I think that overall this was kind of I don't know, you want to say like above average performance overall as a quarterback, but he did what he needed to do to win. Specifically for me, that makes the big difference between what I saw in week 1 with Daniel Jones of this year and week 3 of Daniel Jones this year that looks the same, that's bad, is I'm not seeing the same precision and deep ball accuracy that we are used to seeing with Daniel Jones throughout his NFL career. He has always been, a pretty lethal deep ball thrower. Now it looks like he can't hit the side of a barn if it's beyond 20 yards. But what the biggest difference in what we've seen from week 1 to week 3, in my opinion, is his confidence in the pocket, his ability to move in the pocket. You can see he's keeping his eyes downfield. He's not panicking when one rusher comes through. He's not running into sacks. And it's that's the difference, right? When you have the added talent that was brought in, when you have the offensive line and the offensive line coach that was brought in, and then you go out and you get Malik Nabers and you run the Brian Dable offense, you can run an offense that scores points. I mean, and for all intents and purposes, this is a game where they really scored 4 touchdowns.
Yeah,
If we're gonna really look at it, coming off of another game where uh,
they had
I don't know,
3.
yeah,
Well, I think it's 2 things. On a smaller scale, it looks like when Daniel Jones week 1 looked rusty. He looked like a guy who hadn't played in a long time. Now, a lot of that because of the injury and the very, very limited amount he played in the preseason. I think now we're at week 3. I think he just looks a little more comfortable playing, period. But I think the bigger thing, I think it's his coaching staff. And this, last week we were pretty hard on the coaching staff for screwing up the roster. And
sure,
might have been a little bit to like, well, maybe we should reevaluate these guys. But Brian Dable is a good offensive coach. It's not going to, he may not have the offense or he may not have the personnel to have an offense that's going to be an air raidy type that, looks like the 99 Rams, but he's a smart offensive coach and he designs offenses to do what the personnel he has does best. And I really think now after week 3, we are starting to see an offense that's been designed to do what Daniel Jones can do best right now. Not Daniel Jones 5 years ago, Daniel Jones now. And also with, what this offensive line can do for him. And now with a guy like Malik Nabers, and you're seeing a lot of, quick dropbacks, quick passes, get Nabers into space. He does that catching, does that little turnaround to the sideline and stuff. It to me, the offense just it feels different than it does in week 1. It looks like it's designed different, and the play calling is different. I think it's putting Daniel Jones in the best position to succeed. So yeah, he looks better, but I think this is what they've crafted for him makes him more comfortable running it, and that credit goes to Brian Dable.
oh, absolutely. I will say though, like it would be remiss not to mention a couple of things that there were. We can speak very glowingly about Daniel Jones's performance in what we saw, but there were about 3 or 4 plays that were close to being nightmares. I mean, you have one throw over the middle that looked like it was just aching to be picked. He had an interception taken away on what I would perceive to be a bad roughing the passer call. I know it is the rule. It was the correct call. I just hate that call. It did not impact the throw whatsoever. Just a couple of hands to the helmet. You have a fumbled snap, which again, high snap, but
Daniel Jones did not become Joe Montana overnight.
No, what I'm saying
is he's playing functional right now, and functional means he's not doing anything that he's going to win a game for you by himself. And there's still going to be that kind of head scratching plays that he has also, but he's not the butt of jokes at this moment. I mean, just watch the league this weekend, and I can point out 6 or 7 quarterbacks that are like, well, I'm glad I had Daniel Jones over this joker.
Yeah. That's correct. I mean, in some regards, like Daniel Jones is the guy who's holding the ball a lot, but so it's more likely when something bad happens, it's going to be on the quarterback or around the quarterback or something like that. But in some regard, it needs to be noted that the ball sort of just fell their way. Things went their way in a couple of scenarios that could have otherwise changed the way the game went. So
I hear you.
I just would be remiss not to mention those because, I mean, that really is, if that interception stands, it's a huge problem. If the other one is picked off, if he fumbles that high snap, those are game breaking plays.
Sure.
And
sure.
none of them happened, none of them counted. Speaking of game breaking plays, I'm going to pivot here now to Devin Singletary.
Sure.
Who did not earn a fart from me in this game, but was an honorable mention. Starting right away, 16 carries for 65 yards. I'm gonna credit him with 1.5 touchdowns.
Sure.
So far this year, he looks great running the ball. I'm very pleased with what we got from Devin Singletary for the amount that we paid for him, what we're getting out of him. I think that the slide at the end of the game is not only very heads up, it's very, I didn't expect him to break that long of a run. I don't know if he really knew at that time, like, hey, or if he's thinking as he's running, or if he really did that much thinking ahead. But either way, it's impressive. And more than anything, it's just an unselfish play.
Mhm.
It's very easy for him to just take the stat and say, defense, go hold them, from scoring twice. But really what you do in that scenario is when you effectively end the game like that, you ensure that a defense that suffered some injuries, and we'll talk about injuries, has no chance of being injured anymore in this game. This game is now over.
I said something last week and you laughed at me. How I said, this team obviously hasn't quit on this coaching staff. And you're like, oh, can you say that week 2? But those are little subtle things that makes me think that everybody's still completely invested in everything, winning this coaching staff, because that is a pure, when you go to negotiate a contract and when you're, whatever reason, the first thing you do is you take out your big binder of all your stats.
True.
And one of the biggest things a running back is yards, touchdowns. Yeah. And when you're giving up a cookie like that, that's saying something. That's saying something for all-in investment and also the character of the guy. So,
well, he's also got to not give up the biggest cookie of all, and that's the ball. Coughing up the football for the second week in the row. Both times are on promising drives where the Giants can really take the lead at that point. Like, they already had the lead, but like those are moments where the game is almost over because you have so much of a lead at that point. And last week at Washington, they end the half with a score. They start out the next half and they're driving down the field. They cross midfield. You get a great run and then you fumble the ball. There's no good time to fumble, but those are just killers that can't happen. They just can't happen. That's something that he's really got to get control of.
And control of immediately.
Yeah.
We're encouraged by the better offense and the increased production, but this is still not a team that gets into the red zone that often or has super long drives. When they get in there, they have to score, and they can't beat themselves.
Right. Yeah, really. This is a team that needs every advantage. We said this on the preview, is that they need every advantage, and to disadvantage yourself is just something that they are not designed to come back from right now. And they haven't been designed to come back from that in quite some time. Mm-hmm. It's why you can excuse Eli Manning throwing 40 interceptions to 40 touchdowns or whatever. You know what I mean? Is because they were built to handle some turnovers at that time.
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to pivot to let's go right to this. I think this is going to be a unanimous star between you and me, and that's Malik Nabers. 8 catches on 12 targets for 78 yards, 2 touchdowns. I don't even know if I really need to elaborate too much. You and I have not talked about this game at all. So, I'm curious to hear it. But at the end of the day, Malik Nabers seems to be as advertised. He is just an absolute stud.
I mean, he was one of the, I think he was the best player on the field yesterday.
I think the best players on the field go in order this way. It was Malik Nabers, Dexter Lawrence, and Amari Cooper.
Yeah, we're gonna get to I want to have a conversation about Amari Cooper in a little bit for sure. But
we'll talk about all that when we get to the defense.
But absolutely though, yeah. I mean, it looks like a guy that it's too bad he had that drop at the end of last week, because that's gonna put some doubts in some people's minds just because of how bad we've been for the last decade or so in the history of drops. But he not only can make the spectacular, he can make something out of nothing. He also seems to be like, to me, it's like a cross between Sterling Shepard and Odell Beckham, where you have the reliability of Sterling Shepard, but the fantasticness of Odell Beckham.
Yeah.
Does that make sense of a comparison? Like of a mash? Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a legitimate safety valve for Daniel Jones. I mean, really, at this point, you can kind of write into the playbook like the fuck it, Malik Nabers is down there somewhere kind of situation. Just a series of excellent catches, all of which are alpha number 1 wide receiver, barely repeatable kinds of catches. You know what I mean? Like mossing a guy over the top of him, which is legitimately like an interception that was taken away from somebody while tiptoeing on the sideline. The first touchdown catch was insane. And also like one frame from being out of bounds, but still.
And these catches resulted in touchdowns and resulted in first downs. They're not just like random highlights that don't really mean anything. They're
huge.
Critical points of the game.
And, we already mentioned Brian Dable, but Brian Dable finding ways to scheme him to be up against Emerson instead, just by putting him in motion. They wanted to keep Denzel Ward on one side of the field, and they will take that advantage anytime that they can get it. Which goes into, I'm going to keep saying this because that was really my talking point going into this game in the preview pod, was this team just needs to take advantages where they have them. There were spots where Cleveland is weaker. I thought kind of the middle of the defense, they didn't really need to do that because I really didn't think that they were just going to let Denzel Ward cover half the field and not follow Malik Nabers. But if that's an advantage that they're willing to give away, then take it by all means. So I think we could probably do 1 hour just talking about how important Malik Nabers is going to be to this franchise, for the next 5 years. But I don't really think it's necessary. So, was there anything really from this game that you want to talk about with Malik Nabers? Anything further we haven't already said?
No, I think we covered it. I mean, he's already establishing himself. Like you said, he's the safety valve too. He's the big play guy, but he's also the safety valve. And, that's going to help your running game too when you have a legitimate number one receiver who can do so many different things.
Yeah, at this point, the only thing we haven't seen, and it's really just because Jones hasn't hit, and Jones missed him badly on one whole shot down the sideline.
Was Hyatt, right? Didn't he miss deep downfield?
That was deep downfield. I mean, along the sideline, there was a whole shot between the safety and the corner. He just missed Malik Nabers. He missed Hyatt down the field, and I think Nabers was a deep shot too at some point that he missed.
There were two big ones he missed that the guy had steps, and he just missed him.
And I think that we will see that eventually this season. I'm not sure which game. And if we don't see that, it's going to come. That's the one thing we haven't seen from Malik Nabers yet is the deep ball.
Well, the one thing we can't do is we can't give up on that trying, even if Daniel Jones is a poor job, because if we just give up on it at all, that just, you talk about like taking half the field away, that takes away the back part of the field away for the defense. So we have to keep trying. Now, I'm saying throw a deep ball every series, but it has to be shown once or twice a game.
I want to talk about another wide receiver, and I think this is sort of an unsung hero. I actually am going to give him a star, and that's Wan'Dale Robinson.
Okay. 7
catches on 8 targets for 61 yards. At this point, Wan'Dale is starting to prove himself to be a dynamic chain mover. This is closer to Sterling Shepard for me, just in the way that he moves and stuff like that. But he is your third down chain mover in the way he can just kind of make the first guy miss, and he can turn your 3rd and 2 into 1st and 10 on a 15-yard gain. Well, but he can also, I don't want to say like stretch the field, but he had something. It was like 2nd and 16. He converted as well. He is becoming, and I kind of sort of predicted this. I thought it would happen a little bit later in the year, and it probably will. But I think with all the attention that Malik Nabers is going to start garnering, I think the underneath play and his ability to make the first guy miss will make Wan'Dale one of Daniel Jones's top targets this year.
And I think he's the biggest recipient of how this offense has been tweaked a little bit to be a little faster. 3-step drop, quick throw. And I think he's a guy who's going to take a lot of advantage because that's exactly what his game is. Get the ball really quickly, make a move, make that first guy miss, and then go. So I think he is going to be the biggest. I think you're going to see more receptions from him. I think you're going to see more potential big plays out of him.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is going to be him doing the work after the catch.
Agreed. Yes, that's kind of how this offense is being set up for. It's going to be, okay, get the ball in their hands as fast as possible, and you go do something.
The only other thing, the other group I want to talk about on the offense is the offensive line. This is a really tough defensive front, and this is a tough defensive coordinator that likes to get after the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Myles Garrett is probably the best edge rusher in the game right now. If he's not, he's definitely in the top 3. Right? I mean,
I guess you could say that.
So they had their work cut out for them, and it was not perfect, but it was not a disaster at any time. I don't think. Like, Daniel Jones definitely took his wallops, but he took his wallops because he stood in the pocket and delivered.
Yeah,
He was not getting drilled left and right running for his life. He was not, I mean, he had to move in the pocket, which is, we said this at the top of that, but this was not a disaster. It didn't look like every single play the quarterback was getting killed. This looked like the quarterback was getting knocked around while making plays.
it actually felt like as the game went on, it got better and better. Because I think
Sure.
I think I texted to somebody early in the first quarter, like he's going to get killed today. Something like there's one or two of like that, and I just felt like it was cleaner. And you're right, that is a pattern we are seeing this year, where Daniel Jones is like walking into sacks and not moving properly in the pocket. But from the offensive line, if you're spotlighting on them, specifically, they're doing a really good job, and they're doing a lot more than I hoped or expected for sure.
This was probably one of the worst games we've seen from a healthy Andrew Thomas.
Yes.
Now, granted, he had the toughest assignment of the day, blocking Myles Garrett. But even so, you already agree with me, this is one of the worst Andrew Thomas performances we've seen from him as a healthy player. It still looked better than some performances from Evan Neal last year, other players, just to show like how far this offensive line really did come with the veterans that were added and the new offensive line coach. This was leaps and bounds better than most games that we saw last year.
If Andrew Thomas has a bad game, or if Andrew Thomas is hurt, it's a disaster. This was, if he's not playing at 100%, or just not playing well, there wasn't that noticeable of a dip. You don't have to protect one side over the other for it. So I think that's.
I mean, he also wasn't on ice skates the entire game. He just had more bad reps than we're used to seeing.
Oh, he wasn't a sieve at all. He wasn't, oh my God, what's wrong with him? It was just not up to his normal standard of Pro Bowl-ness.
I think the big takeaway that I have from the offense this week is it's starting to dawn on me now, and maybe this is a cold take. Like, maybe I should have figured this out a long time ago. I'm going to use Brian Daboll and Daniel Jones like interchangeably throughout this. So when I say one, I mean both.
Sure.
I think the first 3 plays of every single drive are the most important plays of every single drive for this duo. This is an offense, and I don't know if it's because of Daniel Jones. I don't know if it's because of the way that we call plays with Brian Daboll. I'm not really sure. Maybe it's a combination. But it's an offense that really needs to get a rhythm going. It's like so important that those first 3 plays get them a first down. Because you can see, I mean, this sounds like duh, but really when you look back, like think about it. Like if they have 2 3-and-outs in a row, they just can never seem, it's like driving in the snow. They never quite get grip of anything during the game. But if they can get a rhythm, you can see how quickly, one first down turns into a 15-play drive that goes 80 yards for a touchdown. It's that simple. Like, those first 3 plays have to happen. And one of the things that happened here, I don't know if it was the first 3 plays, it might have been the 4th play of that drive. Daniel Jones throws an interception that is called back due to penalty. And that's kind of, maybe that penalty is the only reason that they are able to get off to a rhythm in this game. It's kind of hard to tell. I mean, you're playing,
It certainly feels that way. And again, I think that's part of this offense. It feels very West Coasty in a way, where it's quick, it's ball out of your hands fast. It's, okay, let's go. Let's get into a groove and get in a groove. And, for whatever reason, it takes a while to get into that groove. But once they're in that groove, it seems fine. So I completely agree with you.
Yeah, and that's something I think I'm just going to monitor for the rest of the season, is like how effective the offense is when they have a 3-and-out to start the game.
I also would like to see, as they're kind of evolving this offense a little bit, I think I'd like to see a little more tempo to it also. I think that might get it into a little bit more of a groove, faster.
Yeah,
it's still,
yeah.
I mean, the plays still seem kind of, quick, compact, not that far past the line of scrimmage, but maybe mix it up a little bit with a little tempo. I mean, it just seems overall the league, if you're watching these games, they all seem really, really fast this year. And I think a lot of it is, it seems like there's more running, less passing, and just a lot more eating up a lot of the the play clock. So,
Yes.
so if you look at number of plays per game, number of drives per game, it all just seems down. I think that
Well, the
just might be,
passing yards are way down.
yeah. I just think, overall, like, how many drives did the Giants have last week? And I know the defense couldn't get off the field, but still, it just didn't think we'd have a lot of plays. But it feels like that. I watched a lot of football. I was on the couch all day yesterday, and it just seemed like every game was the same thing. It's like, well, the quarter is over already. Nothing happened yet.
Yeah.
So I think, maybe to kind of jumpstart themselves is maybe pick up the pace a little bit, or at least, you know, change it up how your tempo is going, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't disagree with you, but I think maybe this is just sort of a team that Brian Dable feels like milking the clock is their best advantage.
Oh, I think this team, if they're going to win games, this team, and I have no illusion this team's now all of a sudden the playoff team, but they're going to have to play in the muck. They're going to have to make these games ugly and dirty. They are not winning 38-35 games. They are going to win games, like they should have won the Washington game. A bunch of field goals, try to keep the time possession on their side as much as they can and make it quick. So, but I'm just saying, you don't have to all of a sudden, be, the 2008 Oklahoma team, which snaps the ball every 3 seconds, but maybe a little more tempo, maybe in the beginning of games too, to kind of get into that groove early.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I just think that I think my takeaway is every single drive, those first 3 plays better be scripted perfectly. Because they have to be scripted perfectly so that they can be executed perfectly. But both things need to happen. Like I said, Brian Dable, Daniel Jones, they are interchangeable in this conversation.
For sure.
I don't really have anything else on the offense, I don't think.
No. I just I continue to be pleasantly surprised with how run blocking we're doing on the offensive line. I'll admit, if this keeps up, that I was wrong for being that so much worried in the offseason.
You were just skeptical. You weren't really wrong.
Skeptical, yeah. I mean, again, we still only played 3 games, and we'll see. Good tests coming up this week, and
we'll see if we've even played a tough team since week 1. The Commanders might still be nothing. I know whatever they're beating up Cincinnati right now. The Browns may be nothing. Seriously.
Yeah. We are still in the data acquisition phase of this season.
Yes.
Let's wait. Let's just play it a little longer.
On the defensive side of the ball, this is where they really took their advantages where they were presented, and that was, Jack Conklin did not play. David Njoku did not play. Nick Chubb is not here. So they had 3 big spots there, and they took advantage of the offensive line right away. I mean, right away. And then once they beat up the offensive line, they literally beat them up. I mean, the starters couldn't hang in there healthy. They were getting thrown around. They had to move guards out to tackle, bring the center over to guard, bring the backup center in. I mean, they had to play musical chairs because they couldn't even hang. And that was one of the things I said, right? Like Jedrick Wills might be playing with a bum knee or whatever the hell it was. They needed to take those advantages where they were presented and capitalize on them, and they absolutely did. Dexter Lawrence gets an absolute star for this game. I think he was the second best player on the field all day.
Yeah.
And, to the tune of 3 tackles, 2 sacks, a tackle for a loss, and 4 QB hits.
I might even give him a consolation more than just a star.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, the thing is, too, is this was the type of game where, we're in desperate situation. We need our best players to play well. And guess what? They all did.
Yes.
Dexter Lawrence played really well. We mentioned Nabers played really well. We're going to talk about Brian Burns in a minute. He finally showed a heartbeat. But that's what you need. You need those guys to step up and be leaders on the field. I don't care what the kind of halftime speeches they give or whatever. I need to see production on the field first, and we finally got that.
Yeah, and I think we could talk about Dexter Lawrence every week, but at this point, the commentators even say he's the best defensive tackle in the league, second only to Chris Jones, maybe.
Okay, I'll take number 2 in the league. That's fine with me.
Yeah, I can live with it. We got to see Azeez Ojulari showed up in this game. I mean, they got production from all over the place. 2 tackles from Ojulari, a sack, 2 quarterback hits, and a fumble recovery. He showed up. You mentioned Brian Burns. Hang on, I'm just going to pop through some 4 defensive linemen here. Brian Burns, 3 tackles, a sack, a tackle for a loss, 2 quarterback hits, 2 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. And Elijah Chapman, undrafted guy that they found and fought his way onto the team, gets 3 tackles, a sack, a tackle for a loss, a quarterback hit, and a fumble recovery. All of those guys had major contributions in this game.
I saw the stats somewhere. I don't have it in front of me, but 9 players had at least half a sack.
Yeah, something like that. They had 17 quarterback hits and something like 30 pressures.
And this is a guy, Deshaun Watson, who didn't we say we were a little worried about him moving around in the pocket and creating something out of nothing?
Well, there was no pocket to move around in. I mean,
yeah.
This is a game that I'm sure Leroy Bickerstaff would love to forget.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what? He looked like garbage in this game.
Did you hear the crowd in the early 4th quarter chanting, "We want Jameis"?
I did not. He went in on a 4th and 1, didn't he? He didn't get it.
Twice they did him try to do their version of the tush push. And if you're chanting, "We want Jameis," you need to reevaluate your life as a fan base. I'm serious. And guess what? There is no Daniel Jones out in Deshaun Watson's contract.
Well, so that's the thing. For all the lambasting that we hear on Daniel Jones's contract, and I'm not going to defend it or anything, this Deshaun Watson contract, if this is what you're getting, I mean, if paying out the ass for a quarterback is supposed to be, this is the guy that elevates a team, even if this guy's bad or that guy's bad. You have Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy on this team. This is what you're getting, and not only that, really feels like, I don't think he doesn't seem like a great teammate right now. I don't know.
I would need someone to give me an argument that this is not the worst trade in the history of professional sports.
Well, it's certainly the most despicable. Yeah.
I mean, for all accounts, the amount of capital they had to give up for him, the ridiculousness of that contract that they gave him, the fact that he is, close to public enemy number 1 in the NFL.
Sure.
That is a move that the Cleveland Browns, that's why the guy has the jersey with the 96 quarterback names on the back of his jersey. Yeah. They just make dumb decisions. And this was just horrible. And they're unlike us, again, where we could be starting over next year, they're stuck with him. There's nothing they can do. Yeah, he is completely untradeable.
I remember looking it up in the summer, but I don't think they can get out of that contract till like 2027 or something like that.
Right. Yeah. The only thing they can hope for is
he gets arrested.
Oh my God. Jaden Daniels is 20 of 22 for 268. Not bad.
Incredible.
And he just threw a dime for another touchdown. Jesus. Wow. Scary. I'm scared.
Another guy I want to mention on the defense that I think is a unsung hero, Jason Pinnock. He's not, I don't think he's ever going to be like household name safety. I don't think, a casual fan that's not a Giants fan will ever know who he is. But this dude, for what was given, he's like a Jets cut down day guy.
Yeah,
has come in here and just done everything that was needed. And again, another sack, 7 tackles and a sack.
He feels like a placeholder until we get somebody better, but he's holding down the fort.
He's making a good argument that we don't really need a new safety.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He was, like I said, he brought in to hold down the fort and just don't be a sieve. Don't be, garbage until we get somebody better. And guess what?
If I'm looking at off-season needs now, a day after week 3, or I guess if it's Monday, it's still technically week 3. If we're looking at off-season needs, I'm looking at the defense first, but I'm not really thinking about safety. I'm thinking defensive tackle. I'm thinking some edge depth. I'm certainly thinking corner and corner depth. I'm not really worried about safety. Not right now.
Not at this moment.
Yeah. And no. if you add in stuff we'll need on offense, like a swing tackle, another quarterback probably, some depth all over the offensive line.
This was
Safety just keeps falling further down that list.
Yeah, this was a pre-Just Giants staple of Grump and I after every week. Top 5 draft needs. Let's go. What are they?
Yeah.
And I still, if I'm looking at
Well, it's not draft, it's off season.
Off season, yeah. I would, I'm not making this my off season thing now in week 3, but right now on offense it's quarterback, on defense it's to me it's corner right now.
I'm just. I would have thought that Tyler Nubin was only one part of the picture, and that we would have to wait, and Jason Pinnock would be replaced, or maybe he would become the backup. I'm just not worried about making Jason Pinnock a backup at this point.
I do want to talk about cornerback, and
let's get to it.
Let's talk a little bit about Deonte Banks.
Mm-hmm.
We have talked for years on this show, and you said it for years also, that it takes a while for a cornerback to develop in this league from being a rookie on. And he's had some tough assignments this year. In your opinion, you are, you're the film cruncher, you're the draft guy, you're the guy who evaluates technique and everything. Do you see him eventually being a true number 1 on this team, or do you see him just being meh?
Well, I would say right now, he's not meh. I would say he's a perfectly good starting corner 2. Absolutely fine. Yeah,
that's fine.
So that to me is not met. But if your question is he going to be?
We didn't draft him to be corner 2.
I mean, you draft him to be a starting corner. You don't know what you're going to get. I mean, you hope always with a first round pick that you're getting a guy that's going to line up and win. But also, it's not like he was drafted in the top 5. He was drafted in the 20 range. So you're hoping to get a starting corner there. Well, I mean. You'd better get a starting corner with that. You're hoping, yes, that he's going to be a number 1 corner, but
that's my question.
So to answer your question, I didn't think that he played horrible in this game. I think the toughest assignment in this game that a Giant player had was Andrew Thomas on Myles Garrett. The close second is Deonte Banks on Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper's a very good wide receiver. I think the first touchdown, I think that Banks was in good position. I think that was an excellent catch by Amari Cooper. It's one of those things where it's like, if he got his head around, maybe, but it's an incredibly difficult play. There were some other plays that I thought he was in good position, and he couldn't make a play on the ball. He's got his back to the and he has good recognition as to when the ball is coming. The context clues of the eyes of the receiver, the hands of the receiver, so he knows when to throw his hands in there. The touchdown on the slant pattern, or I don't remember if that was the 2-point conversion.
2-point conversion, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's bad position, though. I mean, you're just giving up the inside leverage on that play.
And I'm asking the question not because of, based on yesterday, this is my opinion, but, we're getting close to almost 17, 18
I'm not
starts.
worried about him ever being a bust, but, there is certainly... It's certainly looking like this year you hope that he was not your number 1 corner, he's your number 2 corner. Because if that's the case, you have a pretty good secondary. But that's not the case. And that was what we were worried. Like, is Deonte Banks going to be that going into this year? Because I was pretty confident after what I saw last year that he was good enough to be a starting corner in the NFL. I still feel that way. That's fine. I think if
nothing has changed for me of the extremely high priority of getting another corner.
But also let me ask you this question. What if the other corner that's on this team is an exact replica of Deonte Banks? Tell me that that's not a damn good secondary. Or whatever. That's not a damn good starting pair. Yeah, okay, so
it's decent, but I want a 1. I want someone who I can.
But how many 1s are there?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, how many do you think there are? You think there's more 1 starting cornerbacks than there are really good starting quarterbacks? You think it's about the same ratio? And I'm not comparing the two as like this guy's challenging this guy. I mean, just like the scarcity of them.
I think that they're pretty scarce, and I also think that their careers are short-lived. It's like one of those things. You have like a Darrelle Revis, and he is the guy until he gets hurt. And then all of a sudden, Darrelle Revis is more the name on the back of the jersey than he is the guy on the field.
I'm not.
there aren't that many Sauce Gardeners out there. You know what I mean? And like some guys that we think are Sauce Gardeners are really more of a product of the system that they're in. It's a perfect match, or they have a great defensive front to help them out. You know, Trayvon Diggs in Dallas, how much of that was scheme with Dan Quinn?
Let me ask you, you think Dory Jackson was a 1? Not now.
2 years ago.
Correct.
Yeah. If we had 2 years ago a Dory opposite Deonte Banks, I think that this game might have been a blowout.
Right.
But it was sort of close to being a blowout. The score doesn't really show it, but
Exactly. I mean, you just take away the first 2 plays of the game, completely changed everything. Also, the trajectory.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going through this. I'm defending Deonte Banks, but to answer your question, he played bad. I'm giving him a fart. He did have the second toughest assignment in this game, but he is not up to the task to covering an Amari Cooper like receiver week in, week out. Not right now.
And that was the whole point of the question was, do you see the eventual growth that he can do that on a week in, week basis? And I'm not saying throw him out to pasture, because he can't. It's just expectations for him is going to be he'll be a solid number 2 on the other side.
So there are technique things that are wrong that he needs to work on. Where I have, who am I to be like, yes, he will be able to fix this. I mean, a lot of that is going to come down to him and his work ethic. So where I have hope for him is we have a very good secondary coach in Jerome Henderson. And he seems to be, from his story, again, I never met the guy, but from everything I've read about him, he seems like an incredibly hard worker. He's a guy who did not get any Power 5 offers until Maryland came calling, which is his home state. He is an unsung guy that fought his way to be a first-round pick, and I would say a bona fide first-round pick. He's playing better than Emmanuel Forbes in Washington, who was drafted after him. So, I think that he has it in him to want to be the best and to work hard to fix his errors. I think that he had things that he needed to work on that, like coming out of college.
He's not like some of the shitheads we've had here in the past who are cornerbacks who just didn't want to put the time in, or just,
Right. But,
for sure.
Yeah. The other thing is, I think that this will help him, and I was really pleased to see this. He and Malik Nabers seem to get along incredibly well. From everything I've seen, like behind the scenes stuff and silly practice things, they look like they are good buddies. But practicing against Malik Nabers week in and week out and throughout all I think there is no, like, the combination of his work ethic, Jerome Henderson as a coach, and practicing lining up against Malik Nabers every single week. Certainly all the ingredients are there for him to take that step. Whether he does or not really is up to him.
And also to help with that is the fact that we're starting to show signs of life with a pass rush
definitely.
To make life easier for everybody in the secondary. Also, we have, that was a, pretty amazing, performance by the front seven this week. But if we can replicate anything close to that, they're not going to be on islands and waiting around and, eventually getting toasted and stuff. So that's going to help as well.
Well, also, I mean, it does so many different things. 8 sacks on Deshaun Watson and something like 17 quarterback hits and 30-plus pressures. It means Deshaun Watson is still an exceptional quarterback that is able to continue looking downfield, surviving all of that shit.
I think I'm going to take away the exceptional quarterback moniker from him.
Well, he's exceptional in that regard, where he doesn't let getting drilled play after play stop him from continuing to throw downfield and look downfield. He never at any point seemed to. Well, I mean, he started to scramble a little bit more, but
we were
correct.
Saying, yeah.
Do we expect that from Sam Darnold? Do we expect that from Geno Smith? These other good quarterbacks around the league, are they good enough to stop hearing footsteps when they're getting absolutely smacked around like that? I don't know. But I do think that kind of thing, if they have that kind of performance against a quarterback that is not up to that task, I mean, you could completely blow coverage and no one even knows. Because, the quarterback has just got explosions going off left and right.
Right.
But certainly Deonte Banks does not appear to have taken the step in in 1 year
And
to
let's be
become a
fair.
number one corner.
And I'm also being fair too. I'm not saying, it's shit or go off the pot time for him. It's, we're still, like I said, is this his 17th, 18th career start?
Yeah,
We're
and
still
it's his third game in this system.
exactly. So I was just kind of like one of those, okay, let's stop and let's think about him for a minute and, calibrate my expectations. Is this guy going to be a number one, or is he going to be a solid number two? Or no, he's not. Like you said, he's not going to be a bust. He's not a bust at all. It's just, when people start getting mad, it's like, why are you getting mad? That he is what he is, or not what you want him to be or think he should be.
I'll tell you what, he earned a solid number two this week. He gets the fart from me. I want to talk about special teams. So, do you have any more notes on the defense?
No, I just think that is, that's what we want to see out of this defense. It starts up front; those are our best players, and they played the best of that unit. And I think that's going to drive everything. If we, come across some really good offensive lines, so we don't get any pressure, we're going to be we're in some big problems. If we can get pressure, and we could, stop the run, we'll get into these games in the muck, and we have a much better chance to win.
Special teams missed a field goal from 48 yards with a backup kicker. That sucks, but I'm not really going to cry about it. I don't think he needs to be cut for another kicker. I think, once you're kicking around 50 yards and it's not your preferred kicker, you're kind of rolling the dice. So
sure, yeah.
It does, in my opinion, reinforce the need to evaluate kickers in this offseason. I don't care about the contract that was given to Graham Gano. At this point, I am worried about him. I think that to some degree, kickers are kind of a dime a dozen. Maybe you're not going to get the elite production you got from Graham Gano 2 years ago, but
I need consistency more than I need eliteness.
Yeah.
Kicking 54 yarders is great. I can't have a kicker missing extra points like we saw last night. I can't see guys who can't, missing a 36 yarder. Unacceptable in this league. Anything 40 and below should be a gimme guarantee, and that's what I want. If I can find some guy who can hit the boomers, bonus, but that's,
yeah. I need a guy who's like 99 out of 100 inside of 40.
Exactly.
That being said, the start of this game was a fucking disaster. So for context, I was trying my best to watch this game on a cell phone while on a boat in another country. So all of those things. And I'm trying to watch, and instead I'm getting text message after text message. I'm like, the game didn't even start yet. What the hell?
Oh, you were buffered and you...
Correct. I was about 120 seconds behind live, and I was like getting text messages like, oh my God, is this an omen? Oh my God, is this all we're going to see all year? Oh my God. And I'm like, what the So we fumble the opening kickoff, and 11 seconds into the game, it's 7-0 on one play.
This is just anecdotal to me. Someday, if I'm really, really, really bored, I'll go research this. But I would love to know what teams' records are who give up a score on either the opening kickoff, the first play from scrimmage, something fluky like that, because it always seems like that team turns around and wins.
I would be interested to see it too. I don't know what I think.
It just feels anecdotally in my life between college and the NFL where, the first play from scrimmage, a guy ran 80 yards for a touchdown, and then we lost, or vice versa. So this was another one of those, okay, take a deep breath,
Well, still, I mean, this team is not good enough to fight from behind like that all the time. They cannot do.
Of course not.
Spotting 7 points 11 seconds into the game just cannot fucking happen. It can't happen. And, I think it is time to wonder if Eric Gray is just not a special teams player in any regard. I think it's, okay to start wondering what his role in this team is. And I'm not saying that, like throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm just saying, is he just running back 3 with no special teams value? It could be. Tyrone Tracy, who's drafted this year, is getting far more snaps on the offense than
Absolutely.
Eric Gray is.
Mm-hmm.
At what point are we just shoehorning this guy into a role he just cannot do? He can't return punts. Maybe he can't return kicks either. Special teams, I just don't care about them. I just need them to function. No mistakes. Just as few mistakes as possible. And every week we have a mistake. Every single week, there's a mistake on special teams. And I think one thing that does need to be talked about is, and we were
But
calling for his name for years, but there was a coaching change among the special teams, right?
yep. Well, I was going to say,
Maybe 3 games is too early, but definitely something I'm writing down to keep an eye on.
Yeah, but it also feels it's a little different. It feels like these are just individual mistakes as opposed to these are bad special teams. Now, part of that might be evaluation of players, who's doing what.
Yeah.
And maybe
true.
part of it is like, well, it seems like Eric Gray has got some sort of hold on somebody where he gets this job where none of us see it. But it doesn't – the mistakes are, okay, a backup kicker missed a 40-something yard field goal. That's not a breakdown.
No, I'm not worried about
teams.
that. No.
Yeah. But I'm saying though, there's a mistake every week, but these mistakes don't seem like mistakes. They like unit mistakes.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Well, I mean, the
We're also
opening,
three games in too.
The opening kickoff for a touchdown last week that ended in a hurt kicker. I mean, that's a unit breakdown.
That's true.
Sure, it's called back for penalty, but I mean, that was a unit breakdown in my opinion.
Yeah. We're also talking 3 weeks in.
We're also talking 3 weeks in. Yep. I
Yeah.
tried to say that too. But I mean, you hear stories, and I'm not going to shit on this guy, but Bryce Ford Wheaton makes this team because he's quote unquote a great special teams player. Where's the returner in all this? Where's the guy who catches the ball as this great special teams player?
What does that even mean when, I don't know the number. 80 to 85% of special teams plays result in a dead play. It's just a fair catch on a punt, a kickoff that goes into the end zone. I mean, it's not like the amount of relying on great special teams guys, and especially now we don't have these gunners on kickoff returns. They're just there. I don't see the need to have, compromise your roster for this guy's a great special teamer.
I mean, I'm doing a little bit of bitching into the wind because they did use a roster spot for Gunnar Olszewski. He's hurt. When he got hurt, they brought in another guy that is strictly the punt returner. Punt returner, I think, is a lot more important than kick returner.
Of course, absolutely.
But nevertheless, it's just frustrating that every single week there's a special teams error. I just want to not think or talk about special teams at all.
And I wonder if it's because we watch this team every week that we see, every week there's a little something. It seems like, again, this was my first week to really watch around the league. I had Red Zone on all day. I had our game on, other games on. But you can see, there's a penalty here, bring this back. There's a fumble here, they do this. So it might be one of those things where it happens more than you think it does, but we're so focused on this team that we remember every single one that happened.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. One thing I do want to talk about is the NFC East. Right now, Washington looks like they're going to beat Cincinnati.
They did. It just ended.
It just ended. So there you go. 2-1 Washington, 2-1 Philadelphia, 1-2 Dallas, 1-2 Giants. Dallas dropped that game to Baltimore at home, 28-25. Philly, because of a massive bust in coverage against New Orleans, was able to claw back and win 15-12 in a game.
They had two offensive plays that meant anything. Otherwise, he did nothing.
Yeah. Yes. Really. Honestly, this game was 3-0 for a very long time. Jalen Hurts fumbled once, threw a pick in the end zone once. They did not look good in this game. I know because I was watching it at the same time I was watching the Giants game the whole time. And honestly, the bust in coverage to Dallas Goedert at the very end of the game that put them into scoring position to win, that really is the whole game right there. You had 3 guys all run into each other, and he's wide open. Maybe that's scheme. Maybe that's talent. To me, it's bad defense. Is all it really was. At the worst possible time, New Orleans' defense has collapsed. What are you thinking about the NFC East after 3 weeks?
I'm trying hard not to be overreaction guy, but just watching the play, I would never do this because I don't believe in blood money. But if I was to go down to Vegas and put a little wager on who the NFC East Coach of the Year, the NFC East Offensive Player of the Year, or Quarterback of the Year, and NFC East Champion, I think they all might be Washington.
Interesting.
That's my bold, I throw out bold predictions all the time. To me, Philly might be they have more talent than we do, but I don't know how much better of a team they are than us.
Right.
Very honestly, I think they're much poorlier coached than we are. Dallas, I think, is teetering on a Mike McCarthy firing. You know, they other than having you know, Dak, who we've argued about for 8 years on this show now about what he is, and CeeDee Lamb, what do they really have as
Yeah.
far as weapons or anything? And the Giants are going to muddle their way through this season. And I watched Jaden Daniels today, and I get it. Cincinnati has no offense, and I get it. It's kind of, but we saw last week against us, we see a guy who, you know, needs reps, but is going to be special. And today he was special. They just said he broke the record for best completion percentage by a rookie in a game ever.
I believe it.
He was something like 23 or 27 for about 300 yards, and he showed a dual threat combination that, not like Anthony Richardson, where it's 80-yard completion and 5 balls he's airmailing all over the place. That guy frightens me, and I already have PTSD from last year. For the next decade, being in our division really, really scares me.
To me, he was the best quarterback in this class. He had the highest upside. I did think that he needed a whole year to sit. I feel like I repeat myself too much, but he was the guy where it's just like, it's hard for me to pass up on Caleb Williams, but I might even pass up on Caleb Williams for Jaden Daniels. The real risk is, can you get him to learn and see the field, and can you get him to respect his body's fragility? Mm-hmm. Those are really the only two concerns I had with him. Other than that, he looked like a dynamic playmaker.
I think, because Caleb Williams had a year head start on the publicity machine and the hype machine, and, being good. I mean, Jaden Daniels was last year. When I saw him in the swamp, he was they beat us, but he was like, I'm not going to go, God, that guy's going to be a first-round pick next year. He's like, he's all right. And he took this quantum leap. But if you had started off, the two of them at the exact same time with the same amount of attention, the same amount of reps, the same amount of everything, I don't know if Caleb Williams is number one pick. I think Jaden Daniels would be.
And I also think, we were kind of talking about the coaching carousel around here. Brian Daboll looks like he's getting the most out of an inferior squad. Dan Quinn, I challenge people to really show me where Dan Quinn is a bad coach. He's coming into a shit disaster organization. He has a lot of work to do, and I think that a lot of the moves he made this year was just to get a competent NFL roster on the field. He will need a little bit to get his feet underneath him. That organization is in total disarray, in the wake of, Dan Snyder.
Being Snydered for 20 years and just really, everything. Bad coaching hires, bad fits, bad everything.
I think that Nick Sirianni might be out this year. I know they won, but they very nearly lost. There was a 4th-and-1 play where they line up for a tush push. They hand it to Barkley, and he loses a yard.
We all know
but he goes into the press conference, and he's like, I have a lot of confidence in our offense, and, if I feel like we're going to make 1 yard on 4th-and-1, I'm going to call it, and I don't really want to have to explain it every single week why I do it. It's like, dude, but you're not converting them.
Yeah.
Like,
maybe not having Kelsey is a factor in it, but we all know Jalen Hurts hates him. We all know that. That's the loudest secret in the NFL. And, we could say whatever we want about Jalen Hurts. If push comes to shove, Jalen Hurts is staying and Sirianni's going.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And all he needs to make one phone call to the GM and one head coach to Laurie and saying, enough, out of here, he'll be gone.
I think that happens. I think that Kellen Moore is probably in the running to be the head coach next year.
Can I make my other bold prediction?
Go for it.
He's gone before McCarthy.
You think he's gone mid-season?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I certainly don't think that Howie Roseman is going to sit there and watch another 6-game collapse at the end of the year.
No.
I think if they start dropping 4 or 5 in a row, and you have these goofy press conferences afterwards, I think that stupid smug face.
There's precedence for goofy press conferences getting you fired.
Sure.
Ask Ben McAdoo
and Joe Judge.
Yeah.
I think Mike McCarthy is also out at the end of the year. I think that one's going to be more of a, there's a potential playoff game in there that they blow again or something like that. But this team has precipitously just gotten worse since he got there, right?
Yeah, somebody has to win a division, so somebody has to go to the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, and my bolder prediction before, don't be shocked if it's Washington. Just for, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, right now he looks like, him and Saquon look like the two most dynamic offensive guys, and also Nabers too. But I think Nabers is third on that list right now, I think.
We have to understand where these rosters are starting from and what their expectations are. 9 wins from Philly is a disappointment. 9 wins for Washington or the Giants is a huge over expectations.
That's why Brian Daboll was coach of the year.
Yes.
There were not expectations for what happened that year.
So, yeah, I'm not really sure what happens in Dallas when Mike McCarthy goes. I got to be honest. So we'll have to, maybe it's just Zimmer. I don't know.
Where are we in the Jerry Jones cycle of hiring big name followed by a Lemmy, a yes man followed by a big?
Is Jerry Jones super old, or is he one of those guys who's not as old as he just looks?
He's super old. I mean,
Okay.
I think he's in his 80s at this point.
Okay.
I mean, his face is only about 17, but he's about, let's see, Jerry Jones. I'm afraid I'm making my computer dirty by just looking up his name.
Yeah. It's like LimeWire.
Rest in peace, LimeWire. Jerry Jones this is the most exciting information time you're going to have here. Hold on. Jerry Jones is going to be 84 or 82, but the bad news is he celebrates a birthday with me. That's awful. Says he will be 82 October 13th, all you listeners. So
that's very funny. I'm glad I asked this question. I legitimately didn't know that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what Jerry Jones is, how long he's going to be running this team in its entirety, and whatever. But I'm surprised Mike McCarthy's survived. Mike McCarthy was in front of a firing range and everyone had blanks last year. I don't know how that happened, but
yeah, I don't know.
I don't anticipate that happening twice.
Maybe this is like late career George Steinbrenner, where he doesn't have his, he's not really cooking with gas anymore, and where in 1982 George Steinbrenner's firing Billy Martin if he farted in the clubhouse, but 1998 one is probably, well, they have 10-game losing streak, whatever. This might be Jerry Jones on fumes, and then he has his idiot sons take over for him when he finally kicks the bucket. So
yeah.
The best thing the Giants have going for him is nepotism coming up.
Speaking of fumes, that's going to pretty much do it for this episode. So we have a short week this week. So Thursday morning, you will have our preview episode for the Dallas Cowboys game. And I don't know when we're going to do the review. I guess stay tuned and subscribe to the show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan, at Just Giants Pod to find out when the review episode's going to be, because I'm doing a whole lot of traveling. I'm not really sure what I'm going to be capable of doing, but it'll happen sooner or later.
That's ironic because Grump, this weekend I have nothing. Giant game is Thursday. Gators bye week. No football weekend for me. I'm just tuning out. I need it.
Yeah, well, come Sunday when I get home, I'll probably just sleep for 24 straight hours. So we'll see. But that's going to do it for us. We will see you guys next time. Until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.